All right, well, we are live.
Sweet.
I can go first here. Just
All
my
right.
take on the case study. My overall impression was that Cloudflare is not doing a good job picking its battles with their employees. Obviously, you can't give in to every employee request, or you can't do whatever your employees want you to do, because I think the owners know what they're doing as far as the business and have a really strong business plan. But I think they need to focus on their employees' needs a little bit more, and take into consideration their needs and their desires a little bit more. They should probably hire an HR person, I think, and implement. They don't have to implement a lot of structure, but I think they do need to implement some structure. Probably a lot of, especially engineers, they probably work. I would imagine their personalities work better in a structured situation. So they need to start implementing some structure in their company. That's my basic take on the case study there.
All right. Yeah, I agree with you. My big thing as far as the issues they had are with, I think there's problems there with the employees, but I would say probably the largest issue I think they have is just a lack of leadership. Really. I mean, the founders obviously know the business and the market very well, but I just don't think they're very strong managers of people. I think they kind of like the idea of, hey, we're all equal. We're all gonna, you know, work together for the company and kind of things like that. But at the same time, people need to know what their responsibilities are at work and kind of what is expected of them. Because it seemed like a lot of the issues stemmed from either people being hired for, or people being hired thinking they're going to do one job and it turns out they're doing a completely different job, or while they're in the company, their job changes, over time to something that they're not either comfortable with or they don't necessarily want to do. And so I feel like some structure would be good. And I kind of feel like their excuses for not having a structure were kind of weak. I know in the case it kind of mentioned, well, let's say you have someone who has the title of VP of whatever, and you'd say they're not doing a good job and you need to bring in another VP, then that may look like, oh, it's a demotion or something. But I mean, that's the kind of decision, managers need to be making, because if you just bring on someone new, then you start getting two people who neither of them now know what they're supposed to be doing. And so it just seemed like without even having defined roles, it was really difficult for the employees, especially when they demanded so much work out of them, because it's like they did work their employees hard as well. And I could see where that'd be really frustrating, where it's like a lot's being asked of you, but you don't even know what you're supposed to be doing. So I kind of feel like some structure and some better leadership qualities would probably help the company a lot. So that's kind of my take.
Yeah, I had a similar take as well, kind of just the ambiguity of the overall atmosphere that they're working with. I think instead of just saying everyone's an engineer and we're all kind of similar, it's important to have those specific, like, I know like they kind of like want to shy away from titles, but it's important to have titles because then people kind of take pride in that. Instead of just having a general job description and then being assigned to this or that while they're there. people take pride in those specific titles that they're working in. They'll even work harder to kind of I guess kind of not magnify, but yeah, I guess magnify their specific job description. Because when you don't have that and everyone's just kind of the same, it doesn't matter how hard you work or not hard, because no matter what, you're just kind of the same as everybody else. And so it's hard to get fulfillment in that, because you don't feel like you're progressing or moving up to like some kind of like senior position. Even though the company is relatively new, it's important to have kind of the vision of where you want to go within a company. I know, like, for instance, my current job, I have like a vision of where I want to end up and what position I want to be working in, and that brings me fulfillment, and I work towards that. But if they're just kind of doing their job and everyone's kind of the same, they don't feel like a lot of them complained that they weren't really getting fulfillment out of their job. So that's what I got.
Okay, one thing I wanted to add, because it sounds like we're saying basically the same thing, but when I read through the case, what stuck out to me was what attracted the employees, because we're talking about engineers. These are highly skilled, highly educated people that really are go-doers by nature. And the case states that they were attracted by a culture that emphasized self-direction, minimal hierarchy, and few bureaucratic processes, which is what each of you have been saying. But to counteract that, I think what attracted them to the culture is also what basically led them to resign, because there was, like, they were self-directed, but as soon as they got in, like had been said, they got reassigned to different tasks, or implemented in their duties. And then the minimal hierarchy, when there was time that something had to be done, like, everybody kind of just looked around, and there wasn't really any structure. And like has been stated, I think these type of employees need a little more structure. They need to know, like, as engineers, they're used to getting down to the penny or the centimeter. Like, they're pretty precise, and I think they need to know pretty precisely what's going to be expected out of them, either in their job, what they're going to have to do, or in the time commitment, because those were the two main things that stuck out to me that they disliked.
Definitely. I agree. I think one of the main things Cloudflare failed to do was set correct expectations for their employees. Because what it's sounding like to me, and what you guys have hit on, was that they expected one thing and they got another, and at the end of the day, they weren't satisfied with the outcome, which is typical. I think that's a pretty common problem among startups. Is they're not, because they're in such a changing environment, they have a hard time setting expectations correctly for new hires. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. Then I guess the last thing I'd kind of like to mention about the case that stuck out to me is kind of like with what you guys have been saying, but I thought the way they did their, not just but like their evaluations, but their promotions was kind of, I don't want to say weird, but maybe unorthodox, because it's like, because everyone was equal, and like you said, it gives you nothing to really aspire for, but then at the same time, because everyone has the same title, but different levels of skill and responsibility, it would be really hard to evaluate like how much someone should be getting paid. and for like the amount of work they're doing. Where it's like if you have more structured, I guess, job responsibilities, it's easier to gauge how much someone should be paying or getting paid. And so I could also see where that would be frustrating for employees because it's like if I'm doing a lot more work than you, but we're basically making the same amount of money and have the same title, what does it really benefit me to do? So that was one thing that kind of stuck out to me as well, is how I thought the pay was, I guess, divided kind of unfairly as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Anyone else have anything to add? One thing I might just mention is it asks a lot about whether they should slow down growth to combat these problems. I don't know if they should slow down growth necessarily. I think they just need to set a priority to their employees. And if that means slowing down growth somehow, then that's what they're going to need to do, because if they don't prioritize their employees at this point, it doesn't really matter that they're growing, because they're going to have so much turnover that they're just going to burn themselves out, and the company's eventually not going to work. And from a business standpoint, I think the business model is actually very good. They just need to solidify their structure and their HR and their keeping their employees happy.
Yeah, I don't think they need to slow down their growth either. I don't know who said it originally, but honestly, I think hiring an HR person would solve a lot of their problems.
Mhm.
Where not only establishing company policies, but then just establishing roles. I mean, you can still have a relaxed environment when you have a supervisor you report to. I mean, it's not that uncommon.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. All right. Any other comments?
Yeah, I guess my last one. I don't think it's usually ever really a good idea to slow growth, especially like stuck out to me is that they have so much funding that they're not utilizing, and they could definitely utilize that to, as they fuel that growth, kind of take the pressure off the employees that they have, and hire more people and kind of let them kind of fall into place and let the current people they have kind of, I guess, move up in some kind of like maybe not a management role, but kind of like a senior position where it just takes a little bit of the where they're like more in a team setting rather than feeling so like that the first guy that quit, just feeling so burnt out. When you have that team to lean on, it's just a lot easier to get fulfillment and rely on each other to kind of pick up the slack and not feel so much pressure. So they should utilize that extra capital that they have instead of just feel like they need to continue to be so frugal because they're already launched, they're already made it off the ground, so they can afford to spend more money at this point.
Yeah, well said. Any other comments?
I'm good.
Awesome. We'll stop the broadcast then.